The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we're going to review Austin's tough 3-0 loss at home against Minnesota United. We'll preview the upcoming U.S. Open Cup match versus the El Paso Locomotive, and then we'll preview the Eastern Conference matchup against FC Cincinnati, and then answer a few more listener questions. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined once again by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and Landon Cottom. It is great to have you back. You know, I know you had a rough Monday last week, so do you want to, without going into too much detail, knowing this is a family show, do you want to share a little bit about how your day went?
Not really. I was in bad shape. I'll leave it at that. And big thanks to Steph for stepping up and filling in. But woke up. I think it was food poisoning. You can get over that pretty quickly sometimes. And so I was like, okay, I was trying to be optimistic. And as the day went on, I was like, maybe I'll be better. Maybe I'll be better. And I was to the point, you get so sick sometimes where you're like, I should drink water. I really should drink water. And then you just sit there for like half an hour thinking about how hard it would be to drink water yes. and just not doing it. Oh, that's where I was on Monday.
That's bad. I do want to say, we told her this on text and I think in Slack too, but Steph was great. Like she was so nervous going in. She did a great job. She had a lot of insight. Like I said, if you don't even want to listen to Swoon Tower for the boys, like you should check out Swoon Tower for the opponent previews. Like they do good work. They know their soccer, and so it was good for her to have the chance to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I will say it's also one of those sicknesses where when you come out the other end, you're almost like happier to be alive because of how bad you felt. Austin FC is not really helping with that feeling going throughout the rest of the week, but I'm going to try to ride the wave and have a good time today.
All right. That sounds great, man. Well, I had a couple encounters that I wanted to talk about pretty quickly. So, I ended up going to a lot of events. So on Tuesday night, I was at a nonprofit thing at the ACL Theater, and as a man of a certain age, I can only go so long in between men's room trips. So I located where the men's room was there. It was running toward it. And this guy yells out at me, he's like, "Hey, you're Jeremiah Bentley." And it was fan of the show, Elliot Nguyen, who was wearing his Moon Tower soccer socks that night. So he pulled his socks up to show me. First of all, dude has great calves. And I love that him and his sons were watching it. And Elliot, I apologize for not standing and talking longer, but I'd had a few beers and I was on a mission. So that was great. And then on Wednesday night, I went to a thing at the Long Center. It was International Jazz Day, apparently, which I did not know that Wednesday was International Jazz Day, but got to see some jazz music and introduce one of the speakers. And there was a guy named Aaron, who was also a fan of the show and brought his mom to a game last week game a couple weeks ago, and made her listen to Moon Tower Soccer on the way in. So I had the chance. He runs up. He's like, Mom, this is the guy. That's the guy you had to listen to. And I think maybe he had met you, maybe at the game or something. He was talking about how he met both halves of the show at some point. So I don't know where it was, but it's always fun to see people out in the wild.
Absolutely. A couple more updates. We have been plugging the Patreon stuff lately. I now have the Moon Tower Soccer bandanas in my house. I have one here in my hands. Jeremiah, I know this is an audio product, but you can see it here in my hands. Beautiful design by
beautiful.
Becca Messenger. This cool, it's Western style with like a kind of a brand style, like a cattle brand style logo in the middle with an M and an S. Got some agave designs. And then one of my favorite little touches is this little moon here that's kind of got the illusion of rolling like a soccer ball, but also the Moon Tower alliteration thing going on there. So I'm super happy with these. I'm being married to a textiles professional. I'm a bit of like a material snob. I'm very happy with how these feel and how they look. I think y'all are going to really love them. So can't wait to get them in your hands. We'll try to start doing that in the next few weeks once we get the hot sauce in our hands as well.
And second update. At some point, you told us you had a hair consultation coming up last week. Can you fill us in on that?
That's right. I now have the official appointment, and so it's going to be on Thursday. So I won't have green hair at the Open Cup game, and then it's an away game on Saturday. But whenever the next, I only ever look a week ahead at a time, but whenever that next home game is, you'll probably see me strolling around Q2 with green hair.
We cannot wait for this. We're excited. We hope I'll see it before then, I guess.
Apparently listeners were excited too, because I've told a few people this off mic, and I forget we haven't really talked about it on the show, but we had been plugging the Patreon for a few weeks. We had a little boost, and then numbers started trickling down of folks signing up. And so when we were setting the goal to do the donation and the hair thing, I was like, I don't know where to set it. Let's do 10 so it's attainable. And then apparently people were very motivated by one or both of these rewards that we were going to do, and got it pretty much in the first day. And so we'll know in the future that if we have some type of motivation like that, we can maybe set the number a little bit higher.
I think that's smart. Well, let's get into the game this week, man. It's didn't go, I think, the way anybody wanted it to, but I think there's some interesting storylines here. So maybe kick off just the result. Yeah.
So big loss against Minnesota United. Austin have now lost 3 of their 4 matches by an aggregate 10-1 scoreline, and are currently sitting 6th in the West. And then now have a pretty tough stretch of games in May. How many games total do we play in May, or like potential games?
I think it's potentially 8 during the month, and now starting down,
8 more from now, right?
Yeah, from now, 8 more, yeah. And so now starting down 3-1. So I think, one of the things that we saw reading that coming into this match is there was a lot of talk in previews about how bad Austin's attack had been, having 7 goals through 10 matches. Austin picks up 0 on the night, and now Austin is sitting sort of in a historically bad, maybe the worst offensive performance in the history of the league, were it to be borne out, with 7 goals in 11 matches, and also I believe the lowest total in the Western Conference. Now, I think one other team has 5 that's below them, but like it's really sinking to the bottom, which is not great.
Yeah, absolutely not. And so there seems to be this trend of Austin somehow being worse at scoring when we keep more of the ball. Do you have any theories here, or any thoughts on that stat?
It was one of those where I felt early on that it was just sort of randomness, and there is when you take a lead, you tend to have less of a ball because you're not tasting the game. But I mean, it does seem to be a trend, and this was a trend on the night where neither team really wanted the ball, and Austin having the ball seemed to play into exactly what Minnesota United want to do. And I think maybe you'll get into this a little bit when we're talking about like the chances and the lack thereof in terms of conversion. But Austin really seems to fail when just sort of when they get turned around, or when sort of there's anything that happens outside of the game plan.
Yeah, that is one thing I want to talk about later, is like when and how we're giving up goals and kind of the trend there. But going back to us on the ball, we had been playing a certain way for a lot of this season, and the results weren't always pretty, but it was effective. And we talked how many times about how repeatable the defensive performances looked. And then Esteves has changed things quite a bit, where it's not an accident that we're keeping or using more of the ball. It is the way we're going out and playing, and the way that the offensive structures are set up, that they are trying to use more of the ball. And I'm almost wondering now if that's a mistake. Like maybe we should just be who we were those first several games. And there was still a lot of room for improvement. And we talked about this on the show as well, where, yeah, okay, the main game plan is going to be sit in a sturdy defensive block and then try to beat them in transition moments. As you're winning a game, as the game stretches out, then you can try to keep the ball a little bit more and tire out a defense, run down the clock by using the ball a little bit better. They seem to just kind of skip that in-between step and said, no, we're a possession team now, and tried to go full bore that direction. And it is better and more intentional at times than what we've seen over the last few years in the down moments of Austin FC, but we're still not scoring, and now we're giving up goals. And so if we're not going to score either way, I'd say let's go back to the stingy defensive game plan, and if we score one, that's fine if the other team doesn't score any. But when we give up 3 and don't score any, that's a problem.
Yeah. But should we be surprised by this, sort of knowing Roto's stated preference for being a possession-based team and like Nico's history with playing this kind of style? Like, it feels that, I don't know. It doesn't feel like anything. It's not going great, but like maybe it's something we should expect from this club. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised they're trying to do it, or if that's what they really would like to do. But does the preference for that style of play trump the desire to win games?
Well, it shouldn't, and I guess that's why Austin's in the position it's in. Do you want to go to our first listener question? Because I think that's relevant to this. This over-under thing is probably pretty easy to make. So this is Robert Miller one. It says, are you comfortable with your over-under for the goals for Vasquez and Ozuni for 2025? I don't remember what they were, what number we said, but if either of us said over, I'm not comfortable with that, no matter what the number is anymore.
Yeah, I want to say it was somewhere between 15 and 20. I don't remember what the actual number was, but it was like one of them, we were like, oh, one of them only has to score 10 and we'll still be good.
Yeah. Foolish. Off-season landed in Jeremiah. And the other one is, do you think the lack of scoring is Nico's tactics or the players finishing? Which is, I think, the more interesting question.
I mean, looking at statistics, Austin, I think I saw Zach from the North End post this earlier, but Austin leads the league in how do you say this? Like wasted XG. Like if you take actual goals minus expected goals, we are -7 point something. And so we've gotten enough chances to score, statistically speaking, 7 more goals than we have. And so to a large extent, you have to look at the players, because they're guys who have scored a lot in the past and they're getting those chances. Not always enough, and I think they could always use more, of course, but the ones that they've gotten, they've not finished. I think there's something to be said for Estevez as well, given the overall results. But I think, again, going back to the previous point, like the overall goals shouldn't necessarily be the only aim for Estevez. It should be winning the games, and if you can do that defensively, then great. But it's those forwards, those guys up top, who are getting those chances in front of goal, and Estevez doesn't have a controller in his hand to hit the right button at the right time to make those go in. That it's all in their hands at that point.
Well, let's maybe go into another Estevez take. And I kind of wrote, I don't think this is the right terminology for it, but I wrote like Nico Estevez, toxic positivity ? Because the way that he's approaching the post-game reactions is very different from Josh Wolf's way. And I think it was a way that was very endearing to the fans when he talked about chances and talked about being positive and talked about what the team was creating. But after this one, it just seems like it's not reality-based in some way, right? Like in some way you have to acknowledge what is happening on the field. And I thought, one thing that was particularly interesting is when he talked about, I'm really proud of this team for how they responded after the first goal. And the first goal was a fluke, and we'll talk about that later. But the way that team responded was to allow 2 more goals and to score none. It's like it felt very weird for him to be like, oh, the way we didn't stop fighting after the first goal, and then I think they allowed the second goal like 10 minutes later. Like it just seemed off.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel weird talking about press conferences, because famously in Austin FC's past, I have often responded differently than a lot of people to press conferences and seemingly think a little bit differently about them. From just an objective standpoint, I view this as Nico Estevez deflecting criticism from his players. And there's different approaches to this, right? He seems to take the kind, at least publicly to the media, he seems to take the good cop approach, where no, it's my fault. These guys are doing their best. They're going to do it. I believe in them, that kind of thing. I don't know if he's the exact same way behind closed doors or in training or whatever. It seems just personality wise that maybe he probably is. it's one approach to do it. The opposite way would be to call him out, to bench him, to do whatever, and kind of take the bad cop approach. I think if he were doing that, then people would be saying, "Oh, he's throwing the players under the bus. He's not respecting them." Blah, blah, blah. And so, whenever you're losing, I don't think there is a right thing to say. Like it's a lose-lose situation. People are going to criticize whatever he says, and so he seems to have picked his path and is just going to do that until whatever end that meets. But the path that he is choosing is the one that is drawing more criticism on himself. And I think that's by design, but maybe he'll regret that if results don't change, the goals don't start being scored, and then he's now staked all of these results on his own back. And that's where all the pressure is going to be coming if he keeps doing that, which, yeah, it's a strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the place that he could take is the whole, we failed collectively, right? This is all of us together, and it's the coaches and it's players and it's the prep and it's what they do, and we're all going to figure this out together. And he really seems to be taking a very much Pollyanna kind of like, no, this is all me. The guys are doing great, and the goals are going to come. And I think that's, for me, that is the thing that strikes me as like being troublesome. To your point, if they win the next 3 matches, I really don't care, right? But this is the thing; it comes from like a losing team, but it feels like a point for more collective, not blame, but more collective accountability. And what we're hearing from him.
I think it's, as far as like what solutions are, not in the press conferences, but like as a coach to motivate guys in a different league, in a different team. If you're Real Madrid and your front line isn't scoring, bench them, put someone else in there. But this is like a very specific MLS problem where our front 3 guys are supposed to be the best players. They have the biggest pedigree. They make the most money. They have the highest expectations, and you don't really have anybody else to motivate them in that way. Robert Taylor can help with that. Some of these other guys can help, but there's still just the expectations and the visuals of it. There is a big gulf between what everyone expects these guys to be, what they expect themselves to be, and then what they expect the guys behind them to be. And I think that makes the dynamics weird, where it makes playing like bad cop hard in this league, where you can't really afford to bench them because you can't all you got.
Yeah, you can't credibly play bad cop, right? Like you can't make an empty threat, which is what that would be in the real world because this league. This was a listener comment, right? I want to talk about luck. We talked about luck a couple weeks ago, and whether some of what we were seeing out of Austin was based on luck and whether the club could change their luck. And we got an answer from a person way smarter than us that agrees with us. So this is the kind of thing we should definitely read, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is John, who is a professor at my alma mater, Texas Tech University. So John heard our little segment on luck and wrote in and said that he has extensive training in psychology and human performance, and that overall we did quite well on our on luck. So good job, Jeremiah. We were kind of talking out of our butts, but apparently we did a pretty good job. One thing that he said he wanted to add was that about human confidence affecting outcomes. And he says, we have data on this. Confidence comes from experience, successful experience. So if your experience scoring goals in a given context or on a given team is low, then let's up the number of opportunities, especially in a game context. Sorry, practice doesn't really count in this way. So yeah, he's saying essentially what we were talking about is more opportunities will lead to a higher chance of succeeding in a game setting. That success will lead to confidence, which will hopefully lead to more success. So far, that's not what Austin has been doing. They've not found any success. And so it seems like that confidence is just getting lower and lower and lower. This is where I hope this U.S. Open Cup game can come in. We talked about in the preseason, these preseason games against USL teams that we are winning. And we talked about how, A, it's preseason, it doesn't matter. B, it's USL teams, the competition is not quite the same. But it's good to know that our guys can bully, like Brandon Vasquez scored goals against USL teams in preseason. It's good to know that these guys can bully USL teams. this is their chance to do this and to gain that confidence to say, okay, we're in a bad way, but we have this chance to play against a team who's at a slightly lower level talent-wise. Let's go into it, show them who we are, show them what we're made of, and hopefully be able to turn that into some more confidence. We'll get into our El Paso preview later and talk about where that could go right and where it could go wrong. But I hope they're viewing this as an opportunity to change their luck.
Well, one thing I want to end this segment on before we get into the details of the game and the previews and stuff is we've talked about May being tough. I mean, I think it would be good to take a look at maybe the rest of May and like some things are going to be positive. I think you hit on the first one, getting to play, that might be positive, getting to play against a USL club and hopefully finding form a little bit and sort of building its confidence, I think would be a huge step forward for this team being able to go differently with things. The next one is ties it into Nicole Blair question, which says, how do you think having Desler back will change the look of our attack? Like we are in a position where I believe that Mikkel Desler comes back in a couple weeks. And I think that anybody who talks about Austin FC, with any kind of knowledge would believe that having Desler back is a good thing and does make this team better, both in terms of what he adds to the club and then the flexibility the club will also have with where John Gallagher can play now. And maybe John Gallagher can play fewer minutes now during this long run of matches and be as effective as possible. Do you want to add on to Desler? And then beyond that, do you have anything else that makes you think that there are brighter times ahead in this month for this team?
Yeah, I mean, talking about Desler specifically, I think earlier in the season and whenever he went down injured and Gallagher came in, we were playing that more defensive style and trying to win games in transition moments. In that style of play, I think the gulf between Desler and Gallagher is not that big, just because of Gallagher's strengths with his speed, playing in open field, playing dynamically like that. He's really good at it and probably better in certain ways than Desler is at that kind of thing. In a game where we're keeping the ball and are trying to use passing and possession to break a team down, Desler is a huge upgrade at that position. So I think if we kind of continue the way we play, that he will be a really well-needed addition back into the starting 11. So yeah, it seems like that's the way Austin is going. And so I think, yeah, they'll be counting the days until he's starting again.
And then beyond that, I don't know if there's like a lot of other light. I was trying to look through the matches and see if there was a streak of games where like these are easy games, but there's like Minnesota again, there's Vancouver again, I believe. There's Atlanta. It's like it'll be tough. I guess the other positive is if Austin gets through May scoring any points and gets Desler back and Danny's on the road back to recovery, this Western Conference is so crowded and so many teams lose that Austin probably won't be, they're not going to be so far off the chase that this team's eliminated no matter how badly May goes.
Yeah, that's the good news is that it seems like nobody else in the West wants to win either. Yeah, just Austin sitting at third, even though they lost a couple of games in a row, and then nobody passed them, and then lost another one in a row and only dropped to sixth. So yeah, the road back to the top is not
it's
far.
Not long. Yeah.
Like it's not a steep road, but we're going the wrong direction at this point.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll get into the rest of this, the details of the Minnesota match.
Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to fef.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fef.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage for your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. We're going to dig more into this Minnesota United match. Jeremiah, leading into this one, what were the narratives before the game started?
I think it's just a couple things injury-wise. On Thursday, Nico did his press conference, said Danny Pereira's injury is a little more involved than he suspected originally, said between 4 and 8 weeks, if everything goes right. It could be 4 to 5. Depends on every player and how they recover, but he's doing well. It's a hip flexor injury, which I think we didn't necessarily know that. And this is kind of funny. He said he tried to hit the ball harder than he has ever done it. And sometimes when you try to do those things, your body is not ready for it. And that's what happened to him.
That's one of the things you hear older guys talking about training with younger guys. I can't remember what Austin FC player. It might have been Ethan Finley or somebody was talking about Owen and Danny and those younger guys after practice just ripping shots from distance because they're young and they're made of elastic essentially. And he's like, I can't really do that anymore. Maybe Danny has reached the age where he shouldn't do it anymore either, or at least warm up a little bit better before he tries it.
Yeah, poor guy. And then we got the Mikel Desler, the positive update, which we kind of touched on a little bit. It says he'll resume training with the team by the end of the week. So I think, maybe after Vancouver, which is May 17th, we could probably see him back. But at some point during this stretch of games in May, we can probably expect to see him too. And then we weren't exactly surprised by this, but going to the game day, Brendan Vasquez was back. So Austin gets basically what is going to be the starting 11, I would think, for probably the next couple of weeks, just with the lineup they have and the guys they have available.
Yeah, it seems that way for sure. Let's jump into the game. So upon rewatch, I wasn't quite sure what I was getting myself into, but watching the first 22 minutes of this game, I was remembering that, like, oh yeah, I felt pretty good about this game up until a certain moment. And it like on the rewatch, Austin FC was clearly the better team for the first 22 minutes. And which is really frustrating. We're going to do this not quite chronologically. We're going to start off with the Minnesota goals and then kind of go through the Austin chances after that. But the first goal on the rewatch, I really felt the injustice of the play because 22 minutes had passed. This was Minnesota's first quote unquote shot, but even like it wasn't even really a shot because this one was marked as an own goal on Ilie Sanchez because it was seemingly a cross that went off Sanchez's toe and into the back of the net. Austin had been dominating the ball, creating some chances, had kept Minnesota's attack pretty quiet. And then just this one moment, Pereira, what is his name? Joaquin Pereira, their attacking midfielder, plays a 1-2 up the left touchline, gets into a little bit of space. It's a well-marked move, but Austin has it covered fairly well at this point. Ilie is kind of closing him down as he approaches the box. So Pereira lunges at the ball to put in a blind cross from around the edge of the 18. Ilie gets the toe on it. It deflects it towards Stuver's near post. Stuver has a ton of time to see this.
Yeah.
It's got some spin on it. So it's not the easiest save he's ever made, but it's far from the hardest save he's ever made. I kept looking for things that went wrong and why he missed it. Did Oluwaseyi like bump him as he ran past? Was there some bizarre spin? Did this happen? Did that happen? Was he blind to it? None of those things happened. The ball takes a deflection. It's spinning and rolling towards him. He goes down. It goes through his fingers and through his legs and into the back of the goal.
Yeah, and I know he took full accountability for that after the match. I mean, he's really hard on himself. In the presser, he did too. And then I know he spent a long time sort of kind of down on the field after the game and really felt like he let the club down. And I think that, one, there's no doubt that he was pretty bad on the night. And two, that we're lucky that he has few nights like this, which is why these stand out so much. And I almost don't want to say Brad Stuver had a terrible night because he has so many good nights, right? That it feels like he should get a pass. But yeah, this is just not a good performance for him at all. One thing you talked about the rewatch and on various text groups and in Slacks and stuff, people are always like, oh man, I feel bad for y'all having to watch this match again, right, with how it went. And so I went into this, I think you touched on this. I went into this expecting this to be like an awful blowout because that's in the moment, that was what my memory was. But when you go back, obviously the scoreline was bad, but like it wasn't as awful, as I thought it was going to, or as one-sided as I thought it was going to be from what my recollection was. And then also it reminded me that it's great that we have 2 days between these games and when we record, because if we'd have made this show on Sunday afternoon, I would have been like, everything's on fire. We're the worst team in the world. We're never going to win another game. But just the gift of a little more time and a little more context and a little more digging into what happened, it's still not good, but I'm in a much less emotional state.
Yeah. I want to come back to this point, but before we move on, is it safe to say that this is Brad Stuver's worst mistake ever?
It's got to be close to it. I just off the top of my head, I would say yes. But I know that Seth Rao is going to come up with some other moment that's worse and correct me as soon as the show comes out, but I can't remember anything that was quite like this.
Yeah, I have a bad memory for details like that, but I can't remember one. It feels like most of the times when we've said this one's on Brad, a lot of them are poor passes out of the back. Like he's trying to hit that little chipped ball to a fullback and he doesn't get under it. And it falls to an attacker and they score on us. Like that's happened a handful of times. There's been some saves
he's got chipped, before. That's another situation.
Yeah, that happens to keepers. But there's some saves where it's like, okay, maybe he has saved a shot like that before, but a lot of keepers don't. And so it's more like where his standards are. This is one where it's like, there's no excuse. This is a terrible, terrible mistake. There's no reason for it other than he did a bad job. And we've almost never said that about him. Okay, yeah, going back to like what this performance actually was. Yeah, scoreline result wise, it's one of the worst games ever. Definitely one of the worst at home. But actual performance wise, I feel like Austin FC has probably won 10 games in their history where they played worse than they did on this night.
I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, but I would like you to explain that to me a little bit.
Well, okay, so leading up to this, I think there's like 4 chances where I think by halftime we have 0.7 XG or something like that. And then throughout the rest of the game, Minnesota, after the first goal, Minnesota was clearly the better team, but it was not translating into repeated dangerous moments in front of goal. And so I think just for those reasons, and by all means, I am not saying it was a good performance at all, but I think Austin has had lots of worse ones where they've kind of, in 22, Driussi steals a goal at some point, or last year, some of those games where we had 2 shots and scored one of them and ended up winning or whatever. I think some of those you could call worse than this one for sure. Leading into the second goal here, this is the 35th minute. Minnesota's pretty energized by that first one. They get a few good shots away. On this one, Austin FC commits a foul just behind the halfway line. And so St. Clair takes a free kick from there. It's way up in the air. It's kind of floating. It's going to land just inside the box. So Stuver decides to come out to punch it. But because of where it lands, he can't really go up and catch because he would likely have landed outside the box. And so he decides to punch it. I think it's Harvey. Somebody kind of bumps him as he goes up, doesn't get a super strong punch out of it. So Minnesota recovers it and is able to recycle. Because they had everyone forward for that free kick, Austin has overloads all over the place, and they don't do great with any of them. So the ball ends up going wide to Diaz. Biru is marking him. Robin Lod overlaps him, and so Biru leaves the ball to follow Lod on the overlap. Uzuni is there, doesn't get to the ball quick enough to contest a cross, so Diaz is able to put in an easy cross with nobody in his face. Gallagher and Svatak are in the middle of the box. They have 3 guys in their space in the middle of the box. So Svatak sees Markanich kind of floating behind, like a little bit deeper than him towards the penalty spot. But he also has Taniolo Shehi and is worried about him, like rightly so. He's a force in the air. And so he doesn't want to leave Oluwaseyi. And by the time someone else picks him up, the ball's already on the way. So Svatak starts stepping to Markanich, but it's too late at that point. So the cross was really good. The header was really good, but the whole situation is preventable if Austin is able to read a couple of those situations a little bit better. And then also if Stuver is able to get either a better punch on the ball or to say, hey, this is no man's land. I'm going to stay on the line. Y'all win this one, and I'll be ready for the second ball.
Yeah, dude, when you get into I think the not that we're going to talk chronologically about the half, but like those are two good chances that there was two chances that were converted. Neither one of them were honestly like that great, like when you look in terms of X goal, but like Austin has a lot of good chances in the first half that they're not able to take advantage of. I think there's like a great sequence around 13 or 14 that results in a couple shots. There's an Uzuni chance. Like
let's go through the Austin chances now.
Yeah,
I think it's a good spot for it. So the first one is 5 minutes in. We're playing it out of the back. The ball recycles back to Stuver, and then he finds Ilie in a bunch of space as Minnesota is kind of finding their shape again. He turns, hits a long ball for Uzuni. Hlongwane is able to get in the way of that first one, but Austin is surging behind the ball, and Sabovic is able to recover the second ball. He plays a really nicely weighted through ball for Bukhari into the box. He has a decent line on goal, but also the two defenders who are there are closing in on him. He has Vasquez just inside of him, and then Uzuni crashing the back post on the other side. And so he ends up taking the shot. I think in the moment, like we didn't have his vantage point. We couldn't see his view of what the path would have been to those other two guys. So maybe he's saying it's too difficult, too risky to split the defenders. So the shot is the better option. Fair enough. I'll give him the benefit of that out there. If you're going to shoot, though, I think the better choice is to know that you have Vasquez and Uzuni like within the goal mouth. And so what I think would be the higher percentage thing is to hit it really hard back across goal towards the far post. If the keeper's able to get a save on it and you hit it hard, he's probably not going to catch it. And then you've got those two guys there waiting to get the rebound. Instead, what it looked like to me is he tried to smash it top corner, ends up slicing it and hitting it halfway up section 105 in the supporters end.
Yeah,
and so that's Austin's first big chance. It's, again, well worked, using the abilities of our players, but squandered. And so going back to like that XG differential and who's at fault for us not scoring, like that is what you guys are paid for, and they keep doing a bad job over and over and over.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's the one of the true things for all these attempts in the first half, at least the ones that create any value. It's the people who have a history of scoring goals, getting in places they should be able to score goals, and it seems like they're making bad decisions more often than they're making bad decisions and then poorly executing, but maybe if they made a better decision, then, right? Like they're making the harder choice and then doing it poorly. So I would say it seems to be more decision-making than execution, I guess is the point of what I'm trying to say, while also saying the execution is not great.
Yeah. Bukhari gets another chance in the 14th minute. Vasquez wins a ball high in kind of a counter-pressing situation, turns, plays a ball. The line of this pass through for Bukhari is beautiful, but it was a little bit heavy, and so Bukhari's not able to get into the box and get onto the ball before St. Clair closes him down. So that ends up, I think that leads to a corner maybe. And then in the 26th minute, this is shortly after that first goal, but there's a long goal kick. Uzuni flicks it on to Vasquez, and he runs onto it. Vasquez carries forward a little bit and then cuts a pass back to the top of the box for Uzuni. He has time to kind of let it run across his body onto his right foot, which is his stronger foot, and takes a shot, but he just doesn't really hit it very hard. It goes straight at St. Clair. He has no trouble with it. I would also be remiss not to point out that on that play, as he's letting the ball run across his body, Osman Bukhari is standing on the right side of the box. Not entirely open, but with enough space that if he plays a square ball there, it's a really high percentage, like first time shot if the pass is good. And so I just feel like I have to point that out for Mr. I see everything. If he's going to not take that pass and then play that shot that has no chance of being a keeper.
Because I see everything.
There you go. Yeah, he sees everything. He sees everything when other people have the ball. It seems to be less, and they should get it to him. Maybe less so when he doesn't. I think that now's maybe a good time to ask about, because you weren't on last week when we talked about this, but like his mentality and like it. You know, Steph had a lot of thoughts that like Uzuni's in his own head, and like he's so driven by scoring goals that not scoring goals tend to make things worse. And I know we saw some really bad body language last week, and I feel like this week we saw some, as amateur body language and analysts who like don't necessarily know. Like it seems like we've seen some more like troubling looks out of him too.
Yeah, I thought Steph made a really good point with that one. Like it's the kind of guy who's so driven, so motivated that when things are fresh or new, that he's a good positive force in the locker room. Will that last if things keep going poorly? I hope so. By all accounts, what players and everyone's saying, he is. And so I'll take their word for it for now. But I'll be curious to keep watching and seeing if that continues to be true. A few more chances for Austin in the first half. Sabovic draws a free kick just outside the box. It's a little bit too close. Sometimes you don't want a free kick on goal, like just outside the box. It's too hard to get it up and over the wall. And that's exactly what happens. Uzuni takes it, but hits it pretty well over the goal just because it's a little too hard to get it up and over there. Vasquez gets a half chance in the box in the 31st minute. It's a really good pass from Owen, a vertical pass to feet to Biru, who had made this kind of underlapping run into the box, and he lays it off for Vasquez. So I really liked that little sequence from Owen and Biru there, but the shot doesn't really turn into anything. Owen makes a really great play in the 33rd minute. He receives the ball at midfield, has Carlos Harvey like riding on his back for a couple of seconds, able to shake him off, dribble him, then plays a stunning through ball for Bukhari again through into the box. He has options. It wasn't his box. It was a little bit wider, but he has options for a first time ball into Vasquez, who's crashing that near post. He instead tries to take a touch and is maybe looking for Uzuni on that, like that penalty spot cut back. But the defender is able to close him down. And when he tries to cross it, the cross is just blocked and turns into nothing. There's another moment after the half in the 55th minute. Bukhari cross finds Uzuni at the far post in a really good spot, and he tries to hit it out of the air and just gets it nowhere close, kicks it into the north end stands instead of anywhere near target. And then, I think the subs come on in the 61st minute. The first subs do. It's Rubio and Taylor for Uzuni and Bukhari. I think these are probably planned substitutions, although you could maybe argue that they're strategic ones just because of how those two guys were performing on the night. But I think they're likely planned substitutions with how many games we have coming up, that I wouldn't be surprised to see various nailed on starters getting subbed out at the 60th minute mark for the next few games. And that just kind of that being the way they're trying to manage minutes, as opposed to starting guys or benching guys on various ones, trying to put out your best 11 when possible, but maybe not playing them a full 90 if you can get away with it.
It's gonna be a small consolation, but this Austin team, especially with Taylor, is more equipped to do this than any other Austin team in the past, because you do have guys like Taylor and Rubio, and hopefully Gallagher and O'Brien to bring on in these situations, so you're not wearing everybody out. You're not having to start the names you wouldn't believe that have started games for Austin FC in the past during congested game schedules. So I just wanted to add that point, that's maybe another little bit of ray of hope for this May schedule, is Austin shouldn't be completely outmanned. Whether they execute, whether the game plan is right, those are different things. But like everybody's gonna take the field for Austin in May deserves to be on a Major League Soccer field, and that has not always been the case.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good point. So in the second half, Austin kind of start to shift their attacking to shape to something more like a 3-4-3, with Biru often sitting a little bit deeper in a back three, and then Owen pushing a little bit higher and wider, and then having those front three guys play a little bit more narrow. As more and more subs come on throughout the game, it eventually shifts to something looking more like a 3-2-5 with Austin playing really aggressively. This turns into a few chances, but still unable to score any of them. Biru heads one in to the net from a Rubio cross, but he was just offside. There's a transition moment where Taylor almost scores a sliding goal off of a Vasquez pass, but he can't quite get to it. He had to, who was it that played that pass? Maybe Obrion? Do you remember who played the pass to Vasquez there?
No, I don't. I remember it coming from Vasquez to almost Taylor, but not what came before it.
I think it was Obrion, and I feel like he held it a little too long, but Taylor ends up having to hold his run a little bit to not be offside. And then when that ball comes in, he's a half step back from where he should have been because he was trying not to go offside and then can't quite slide into that one. Then Gressel clears a Vasquez shot off the goal line at that point. And so they're getting a few chances by throwing all these numbers forward, but then that final goal comes. And if any hope still remained at that point, this kills it. And this one is in the 91st minute, so they had just crossed over into added time. They're playing around the back. Brendan Hines-Ike has a loose touch on the ball. Ola Shehi pounces and gets a shot away. Stuver saves that. Song Bin gets the rebound off the save and has a shot blocked. Then the next one falls to Pereira, who is alone because we're playing a line of 5 attackers. None of those guys have tracked back to Mark Pereira, so he's just alone. He hits a killer uncontested shot from the midfield that gives Stuver no chance, and probably not much of a chance at that point anyway, but that one really felt like the end for sure.
Yeah, that was I believe the Minnesota players waving at the exiting fans. That's when the taunting comes. Was after that third goal when it was really obvious. So you've talked a lot about Austin's chances that went to waste, and early on about how Minnesota didn't create a lot. We teased this in the opening segment, but get into why Austin seems to give up goals when they get in these situations, even when the XG doesn't look like that Minnesota should be scoring a lot. So where were they thriving early, and where now that this is falling apart, are they failing?
Across this whole season, when Austin has been able to be in an organized defensive shape, or in, I guess, some of the more organized phases of play, where organization is as important as individual performance. So this is defending in their block, playing transition defense, maintaining a good rest defense shape so that whenever you do lose the ball, you're in a good place to slow down their counterattack and get back into your shape. They've been quite good in those moments. Even in these more recent games, they've been quite good in those moments. But whenever the structure kind of falls apart, whenever we lose the ball in an inopportune area and are scrambling, whenever for that second goal, when they have a million guys up there and Stuver doesn't get that good punch away, and we're asked to either make really, really good decisions collectively or have players who are just superior athletes or performers in one way or another snuff stuff out. That's when we get exposed. I think someone like Brendan Hines-Ike is a very intelligent player. And I think that's where a lot of his quality comes from. But if you're asking him to go out and just win every ball that's crossed in, regardless of whether he has a right to or not, he's not Virgil van Dijk. He's not Sergio Ramos. We don't have that guy on our team. And so I think those are the moments when we've been punished. And that's what we're kind of exposing ourselves to a little bit more by playing further forward, by getting more numbers forward, and then by punishing ourselves by putting ourselves in those positions at times. But I think it's a thing that Estevez needs to kind of factor in. And again, going back to the point at the beginning of the show, is it worth it? if we know we're going to give up goals playing this way, or would it be better off to put ourselves in more predictable settings when we're trying to defend?
Well, I thought we talked about some of the subs. I thought CJ Fodre looked pretty good for his 28 minutes, and I think he continues to look good in a very limited amount of time on the pitch, and it's going to lead to a question from Nicole Blair. And what do you think about seeing more out of CJ? He seems intelligent and creative when he's on the ball. To date, that has pretty much always been late, often very late, a couple times with a lead. Have you seen something out of CJ that makes you want to see more out of CJ?
I think my answer is kind of the same as it always is with him, that he has some physical tools that are very exciting and very promising. And I think in a game like this, he's the kind of guy you want out there, just who's able to run fast, jump high, be big, hassle guys, stretch the line. He's able to do all those things. Playing striker the way he has been lately, I think one of the things that he'll need to improve if he wants to see the field in a normal phase of the game. One thing that Vasquez is, even this year, when he's been not good at some of the stuff you want a striker to do, one thing he's been very good at is making himself available in build-up, having balls played to his feet, and being able to kind of connect the attack in that way. CJ is not great at that stuff, and he's not really played in that position. So fair, and like, it's no disrespect to him. It's a thing he needs to get better at if he wants to see more time, like in a game where we're not down 2-0 essentially. And so I still don't know that he's the right option for any game at any point, but for certain times of the game, I think he's a really good tool to have, and I imagine that's how we'll continue to see him used.
Well, are there any other points you want to make on this game before we move on to talk about the week ahead?
I'll talk about Taylor for a little bit. Robert Taylor gets his debut. Not a perfect game, but I saw enough. I mean, I've seen quite a bit of him in Miami and knew more or less what we were getting, but it's always interesting to see him in the context of the new team. I thought he had a pretty good performance in a vacuum, and I like what he's bringing to the table. He's a bit more of Uzuni on that left wing is still kind of plays like a forward, where the way he plays, the way he positions himself, he's not really trying to get the ball to his feet to link up possession stuff. He doesn't play that way. Taylor is a little bit more that way. He wants the ball a little bit more. He's active on the ball. And so he's not, when he receives it wide, he's not passive and just, okay, there's nothing here, I guess I'll pass it back. He's always shifting his weight, looking, keeping the defense on their toes. Plays really hard-nosed, downhill runner whenever the ball is moving away from him. So I'm cautiously optimistic at what he can bring. One thing, I wasn't on the show last week to talk about this. Y'all did mention that I wasn't as high on the signing as some people were. That is strictly because of his position and his skill set. I think roster build wise, it's a really solid move. He's the transfer, like the trade, is quite a bit of money, but he's on a quite cheap contract for the quality of player he is. So I think for depth and just attacking quality and good roster building, I really like the move. I don't think he solves this particular team's problems. He's not that kind of creative playmaker, and they say he can play in the midfield, but don't think he's an upgrade from what we have there. I don't think he's the guy who's going to pick locks and break down defenses with his passing. We still don't have that guy, and I don't think he's that guy. He can be another guy to do well on the end of those passes, but we still need someone to make that first pass.
Yeah, and one thing this team in this current construction seems to be a little bit short on that he helps is just like MLS dudes who are pretty good, right? The Ethan Finleys of the world, the Nick Limas of the world, that Austin, I think Hunter O'Brien falls in that category. He falls in that category. Like people who have a track record, and you're not going to count it. They're not going to turn your team around, and you can't count on them to like win a bunch of games, but like what you're going to get from them.
I think Taylor's
flexibility.
I think Taylor's probably better than all the guys you just named too.
Cool. Well, that's great. That'll be a good addition then.
Anything else before we wrap this game up?
No, let's go ahead and take a break and talk about the week ahead. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. Fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage Real Estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
Our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and doesn't really care about Copa Tejas. I think maybe I misread the copy last week when I said that it was the most important trophy in North America. But the paper got smudged and I read it wrong, so I don't think that's right. But anyway, contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we are back. We're going to get into our previews for the El Paso Locomotive game and the FC Cincinnati game, and also answer a couple more listener questions. But first, there's a couple of Austin FC pieces of news that we want to cover.
Yeah, the first one I wanted to get into was this announcement from the club that for ATX Foundation, along with some other partners, Austin Parks Foundation, Soccer Assist, Street Soccer USA, have invested an initial $2 million to bring more public and free soccer spaces to Central Texas. I think the goal for this will be to make sure that everybody in Central Texas are within 3 miles of a soccer space. So this seems like an exciting partnership to bring people together who have been doing this work already, but hopefully with this additional funding, additional partners, they'll be more strategic about it. Ultimately, that was one of the promises of this club coming to town, right? Was that we create more access to soccer at every level of this city. And it seems like this is something that they're actually going to be able to help live up to the promise of.
Yeah, they've done quite a few of these mini pitches already with Soccer Assist and the 4ATX Foundation teaming up with these specific people. You mentioned the parks, like city parks being involved. Hopefully, you're right. This does lead to some more synergy, some more momentum that could get these in some more strategic places in the city and give access to more people in the city.
Yeah, and one thing at the bottom of this that kind of shows that is you can actually submit like a recommendation. So this is no longer maybe the club or Soccer Assist whoever going out on their own and sort of identifying places where there's opportunity available. It seems like there's a lot more community input and community voice. So I thought this was one was worth talking about. You know, we've gotten 32 sponsor announcements that we get from the club that we haven't mentioned this year, but we do when there's like meaningful, impactful work going on. I like to give a chance to share about that. So that's why that was why it was one that I wanted to make sure that we covered.
Let's move on to a little bit of transfer window talk. So the winter, like the preseason transfer window just closed. We got that Robert Taylor deal across the line. Now, I think especially as results keep getting worse, we're going to have an eye on this next transfer window. I think we have a couple of questions maybe leading into some of those ideas.
Yeah, so let's go with Matt Killingsworth. We'll just read both these and then talk about what the window might look like. Matt Killingsworth, hey, y'all, we're bringing in someone in the summer, allegedly. Do we bring in a 10 or do we double down on 1-0 FC and get another defensive option and hope our attacking players can develop the chemistry over the next few months? Love the show. Keep up the great work. Kevin Trahan, kind of in the same place. I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but assuming we bring in a TAM attacking mid and stay in 4-3-3, how many minutes do the midfielders get?
Let's start with the second one.
Okay, let's start with the second one.
So Kevin's question was submitted before Danny Pereira goes down. I think I had an answer in my head before Danny was injured. I think the order that he had it written is what I would have said the answer was, which is Owen with the most minutes, Savovic with the second most, Ilie with the third most, Danny with the fourth most. That was all contingent upon Ilie being healthy and being able to play minutes, because that hasn't really been the case. But if he struggles to stay 100% fit and can't always go, that, of course, shakes it up quite a bit. And then this Danny injury shakes it up quite a bit as well. You now have to factor in Nico Duversarski into the mix as well, because with all these games coming up, he's almost certainly going to have to play some minutes, which he's really only gotten thrown in at the end of games. I think he's going to have to play some real minutes now and get a real test of if he's ready for MLS minutes or not.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. I think he is the great unknown here, right, among all these midfielders with so little history and being so young, and somebody that we hoped would only play, kind of throwaway minutes and maybe some cup matches and stuff like that. So we'll definitely see the medal for him. So the tie between these two questions is this idea that we're bringing in an attacking mid. So my question to you is that your expectation? Is that Austin tries to get some kind of number 10 to fill that hole using the 2 senior slots and 2 international slots that we have available?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, looking at needs alone, I think that is exactly what we need, is an attacking midfielder. But this does not exist in a vacuum. You have players on the team. Some of them you brought in. Some of them were already here. Some of them are very valuable assets. Or most of all is Owen Wolf. I think if you bring in a true 10, it starts cutting into minutes of guys like Owen, guys like Danny, who are probably your 2 biggest trade assets at the moment. And so if you ever do intend to move them on, it's a little bit counterproductive in that sense to bring in someone who's going to take minutes away from those guys. And so I think it's kind of a balancing act of having the most competitive team, running a good business, and kind of nursing your assets into a spot where they're at their most valuable and then cashing in on those assets. Those 2 things for this team are counterproductive to one another, it seems like. And so maybe that, like, let's say let's have some fan fiction here. Rodolfo Borrell comes in the season. He knows we need a Big 10. He's got his eye on someone in Europe, and maybe they're going to be available this summer. And so he says, okay, we're not going to sign anybody now. We're going to leave that money, the roster spots open for that person. We're going to give Owen Wolf a chance to shine in that spot. Summer gets here, European transfer windows open, sell Owen for a bunch of money, use that money to bring in a 10. And then hopefully we're still in the playoff hunt, and that person will be able to come in and actually make an impact on this season and not play 5 games as we limp to a 10th place finish. That doesn't seem too unrealistic, does it?
That's not completely out of the realm of possibility. But I would hope that the reason that there's not a playmaking 10 in this club right now is because he had some other plan, either it being like sell Owen or he's got his eye on somebody or whatever. I'm also interested in the other part of this. So when we went into the start of the season, I believe that the other offseason move other midseason move would have to be bringing in another center back, right? Because it's after, the guy whose name I've already forgotten.
Väisänen.
After Väisänen goes out, it seems pretty thin. Do you still feel like that's the most realistic spot for one of those 2 moves to be made?
I think so. I think they'll definitely be hunting for a center back for sure. I don't expect that to be a big spend necessarily. Maybe you can get someone in the mold of Desler, where it's a in their prime European guy who's not playing at the top level, but just 1 tier down from there. You can get him without paying a transfer fee on a pretty good salary. They come in, they raise your level without hurting your budget too much. That I wouldn't be shocked if that's what they were looking to do at center back. Whether or not you can find another guy like that, I don't know. We'll see. But the attacking mid thing is, I don't know what the plan is. If they think they don't need it, or this is a long play and they're saying, okay, we're going to showcase our most valuable players, sell them, and then bring in our guy in the summer whenever they're available. I hope that's right. I mean, I don't know what else the plan is if not that.
Right. And let's see, like, given the walked in spending in other places, I mean, those seem to be these only 2 options, realistically, because it's not like you've got a DP contract opening up soon that you're going to be able to reallocate to a number 10. Well, let's talk about El Paso now. So I'm actually in El Paso, Texas right now, within eyesight of Locomotive Stadium, but it happens to be a baseball stadium right now because the El Paso Chihuahuas are playing tomorrow night.
Maybe you
This
can
game-
ask them to give you a ride back to Austin, and you can
Yeah.
pocket the money that your company gave you to buy your flight.
You think? Well, surely they get to fly. I was like, I feel like I might be on a bus with a bunch of soccer players to Austin if I went that way. Worries me a little bit. So it's Wednesday night at Q2. This club's fourth in USL Championship. They just beat New Mexico United
In the Western Conference, not in the whole.
Oh, sorry, the Western Conference, right? So they've played 2 U.S. Open Cup games so far. They beat Ventura County FC 3-0 on April 2nd. They beat New Mexico United in penalties on April 16th. So they've gotten a lot of New Mexico United lately. New Mexico United, but probably mostly remembered is the club that Rodney Redis scored against. For all of us real sickos, and I think you've done some studying on them. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you know about the El Paso Locomotive?
Yeah, you mentioned they beat New Mexico in the Open Cup. They also just beat them 3-0 this weekend, and that's kind of their regional rival. And so they're probably feeling pretty good coming into this one. Talking about some of their personnel, their coach is a name a lot of folks will recognize. It's Wilmer Cabrera, who coached the Dynamo at one point. I believe Davey Arnaud's first stint as an interim head coach was after Wilmer Cabrera got fired in Houston. And then he coached in Montreal and was RGV Toros for a while. Started in El Paso last spring. I was reading a little bit about him, and I won't spend too much time on this, but he was a professional soccer player, retired, decided he wanted to become a helicopter pilot. And so he moved to New York State, was working on getting his helicopter pilot license, had done all his hours. And then the last step that he needed to do was take a solo flight to get his license. He goes up in his solo flight. There's a mechanical malfunction and the helicopter crashes. And he's fine and makes it out without a scratch. But he's like, actually, fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore.
Soccer sounds great. Wow.
And so he starts coaching again and has had this career now. But looking at their playing style, by all accounts, and credit to Backheeled, they've been doing a weekly in-depth power rankings. And so I read a bunch of those about them and then watched some highlights and some video and stuff. But Wilmer Cabrera, the coach, has been quite flexible with formation and style. They often don't play with a true number 9 and instead will have several dynamic forwards who can kind of play anywhere across the front 3 or 4 and can hurt you in transition just by being fluid and dynamic in transition moments. And so I think some opportunities and some risks for Austin is El Paso scores a lot of goals. They have one of the highest goal totals in USL. They also give up a lot of goals with one of the highest goals allowed totals in USL. And so they struggle with that defensive organization at times. I think that's something Austin can take advantage of, especially with Vasquez's ability to kind of drop into those spaces and connect link up play. And then if Owen Wolf can pop up in pockets and hurt them the way he's done against certain teams this year, I think that's something we can look for. They also are most dangerous when they kind of push forward and play it on the front foot and kind of throw numbers forward. That means they'll leave space in behind, and they kind of rely on a holding midfielder, and one of their center backs is quite good to kind of clean up some of that mess a lot of times. It doesn't always work, but those two guys do a decent job for what they're doing. So their leading scorer at the moment goes by Andy Cabrera. His full name is Wilmer Cabrera Jr. It is the coach's son, and he's been on a hot run of form. One of their other better attacking players is Armando Moreno, who was actually on that New Mexico United team we played in 2023. And then the third guy who's been doing quite well this year, Beto Avila, who's an Austin native, played for the Bold, played for the Dynamo, and joined El Paso this year and has been doing quite well for them so far. So those are 3 guys they play up top. But as I said earlier, they've been flexible with who they play, what formation they play, what kind of style they're going after. So I really don't know who we're going to see on the field, but these are some of the names that will almost certainly be on the field at some point. Going back to the opportunity for Austin here, it is a lower level. Like, that is not, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. USL is a lower level than MLS. any MLS team on paper should beat a USL team. But as Austin knows, as lots of MLS teams know, these games aren't played on paper. These USL teams come in extremely motivated. They really, really, really want to beat MLS clubs. And so I think Austin needs to come into this game playing confident, but not cocky. Take them seriously, but believe in yourself as well. Know what you're able to do against a team like that. That's my big question is like, can Austin believe in themselves right now?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to talk about them coming at the into this performance, because I believe so. Austin's 1-1 in the U.S. Open Cup matches against USL teams. If I go off the top of my head, so there was the New Mexico United victory, but in the first season, a whole bunch of us went to San Antonio and saw an Austin club lose to SAFC, and that team was, one, not very good, but two, did not seem to take San Antonio very seriously until it was really late, until it was too late for them to turn it around. And so I would hope that it's almost a completely different group of guys, but hopefully this group of guys understands what the challenge is ahead of him and the way to approach this game in a way that that 2021 team did not.
Yeah. Again, as far as playing style goes, I don't know what they're going to do. You would guess, just this is lazy analysis, but oftentimes when a smaller team plays a bigger team, they'll try to sit deep, defend, hit them on the counter. They have the tools to be able to do that. They have fast, dynamic forwards. They have these guys. Earlier in the season, they were playing a lot of 5 at the back with some high-flying wing backs. They have a couple of guys who can play some really good crosses, play really good set pieces. And so, again, Austin can't fall asleep. They can't disrespect them for a moment. They need to believe in themselves, but they also have to take the opponent seriously. And yeah, it's the belief thing again. They don't seem to have much belief in an MLS game. So hopefully early in this one, they can move the ball around, do something to give themselves a little bit of confidence, score a goal, and get through this one and maybe kickstart the MLS campaign. But it could also go the other way where they don't believe in themselves. They're playing on the back foot. A motivated USL team comes in and punches them in the nose, and it spirals from there.
Oh, okay. Before we go into the weekend, I have one more PSA. This is one more note on the night, which is kind of a PSA in that. So my son's about to be a driver, right? He's going to get his license at the end of the month. One of the things he has to do is get 2 hours of highway driving and 2 hours of night driving. So if you're somewhere between Northwest Austin and Q2, Jackson Bentley will be driving us to and from that game. Just be careful. Watch out for the red 4Runner. And I'll just leave it at that. But should be a fun night for the Bentley family. Let's talk about this weekend. So it's FC Cincinnati. This one's back on the road. Cincinnati, I think, finished third in the West last year. Got knocked out surprisingly early against NYCFC. They're third in the West, third in the East. They're third in the East again this year. Had a big offseason, mostly the Lucho Costa drama. But they get Kevin Denke in, they get Evander in, they get some other guys in. So it's new faces, new players, but they continue to be a high-quality team. They had won 5 straight matches before losing to NYCFC again over the weekend. Currently sitting in third in the East again. So, you know, it's a team that after winning the Wooden Spoon 2 years in a row, like really changed their approach and changed their style of play and is like firing on all cylinders, especially during the regular season for the last 3+ seasons.
Yeah, it's a really talented squad. They had been missing several guys for the first part of the season, mostly on the back line. So they've got Matt Biazga and Miles Robinson, and then those guys, I think, missed several of those first games. They're finally getting healthy. Those guys all started in this last game. It seems like a team that's maybe not quite gelling together entirely, but they're so talented that it just doesn't matter sometimes. I think Evander has 6 goals. Denke has 6 goals. And so those two guys are just very, very good. And if you give them half a chance, they can hurt you. And so even if they are a little bit disjointed, you still can't fall asleep. Austin's going to have to be really sharp defensively to be able to stand a chance in this one.
Yeah, DeAndre Yedlin's another guy on the back line that they have. So, I mean, it's a really well-known attack. And then, yeah, Corey Baird, he's new to them, right? But it's just like here's a guy that barely even plays that has had a lot of success in Major League Soccer just to kind of show the depth that this team has.
Yeah, absolutely. What else? What else do we need to say about this game? Like, well, do you talked about not having any easy ones. This is certainly not an easy one.
This is if I was the coach, this is one of those very organized. Let's try to win this one 1-0, on the counter kind of games that you try to win, especially on the road. It's like you need to keep everybody home. You need to keep the shape connected. You need to hope for a good result. I mean, maybe you get the the one outlier result out of these last 4 weeks is the LA Galaxy match. Obviously, LA Galaxy this year is not Cincinnati this year, but maybe you learn from that way of playing, and that's the result that Austin gets.
Yeah. We'll see if the tactics really are still flexible, or if they've chosen their new way forward and are going to do it come hell or high water.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Jeremiah?
No, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up.
All right. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet. Sign up for the Patreon. These bandanas, man, I love them so much. Can't wait for y'all to see them. Sign up for the Patreon, and one of those can be yours. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to review both the Open Cup match and the Cincinnati match, and then preview the Atlanta United match and cover some other Austin FC news. Until then, I'm Landon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothings, you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.
Zula Chupa Boom sauce.
Yeah.